was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine, Salt and Pepper and Heavy D up in the limousine, hanging pictures on my wall. Every Saturday, rap attack, Mr. Magic Molly Mall. I let my tape rock till my tape pop, smoking weed and bamboo, sipping on.
All right, welcome everybody to the new Fantasy Empire show. That's right, the Empire is back yet again, episode number 3. Once again, we have Chris Vaccaro, Nelson Sousa, Matt Modica in the house, and they're going to help give you the winning edge that you need. And as usual, we're not going to waste your time with fluff. We're going to get right into it, help you build your own fantasy empire. So we're going to start off by talking about the live NFFC drafts in New York that happened just this past weekend. And both Chris and Nelson were there. So we're going to hear from both of them, just kind of a little bit about the event. And then we're going to get into looking at a couple draft boards from that action. We have the NFFC New York Super board, which is a regular draft. And then we're also going to have the Super Auction board, which was an auction. So Chris, tell us a little bit about the New York experience. What goes on out there?
Yeah, great experience, Dan. As usual, some of the best high-stakes drafters come over to the East Coast, and we have 2 days of live drafts and auctions, all day Friday, all day Saturday. We beat each other up a little bit at these draft tables. It's a fun experience, but very tough drafts, and it's capped off on Friday night with the what I call the toughest draft that I do all year, and I think everyone else at that draft table will agree, the New York Super, which is the board that we'll be breaking down here to start, followed by, like you said, the New York Super Auction draft board, which was just as hard. So give all our listeners and watchers here 2 different aspects of a snake draft and a highly competitive auction board.
Awesome, Nelson. What do you like about the NFFC in New York, and what was your experience like out there?
Yeah, the fun part is just being around all the guys that you don't get to see all year long. Usually, it's only like once or twice a year. I enjoy the camaraderie, hanging out with the guys, talking football. Could do that all day long. So that's probably the thing I enjoy the most. And then as far as the experience, drafting in a confined league, that's usually always my first confined league of the year. I'm drafting mostly, tournament type of formats up until then. So that one, I think, gives you like a good indication of how people, players, value certain guys in the draft, and you get to see some guys that, rise up real quick and other guys that fall. So I think that's the unique part, is because it's a confined league that, it doesn't matter with ADP. You just draft the guys where you think, it fits your team the best.
Yeah, no doubt. And we have the live events up in Las Vegas coming up this week. That's a lot of fun. We're going to be looking forward to that. If you go out there, you're going to find Chris and Matt and myself out there. Nelson is going to be drafting from the Fortress of Solitude, I believe, back in New York. But
a man cave.
Yes, he's got too many drafts going at once. He's doing the Chad Schrader thing, I think. So we've got to let him handle his 5 drafts at once and everything else that Nelson's got to do to get them all in there. But the Vegas experience is something I really look forward to. I think it's a ton of fun. First time I went out there was about 10 years ago, and I went out with a couple friends because I didn't know anybody. It was like I'm walking into this place. I'm like, I don't know a person here, and I'm pretty new to this whole high stakes thing. And within even 1 year, all of a sudden I'm greeting people that I know, and now it's just like a great time. It's almost like a convention right along with the drafts, and you get to see a lot of people that you really enjoy seeing every year. And I'll definitely enjoy meeting up with Chris and Matt again out there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you've never done any of the live events, either in New York or Vegas, definitely something we recommend. It's a whole lot of fun. There's nothing like sitting around the table with 11 other people in a live room and just drafting away and having so
yep, no doubt.
All right. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna do a quick commercial here while I get the board set up, and then Chris is gonna let us know how the Super works, and then we'll start breaking down that board.
Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
All right, welcome back. And so we have the Super board up here. Chris, you want to just go through what's going on with the Super, how it works?
Yeah, Super's been going on for over 10 years now. Like I said earlier, the best drafters on the East Coast are all around. 5 Hall of Famers, should be more than that, actually, at the table. I think almost everyone at the draft table has won 6 figures or more. There's no easy spots in this draft when you go around. Value gets completely sucked out, and it's basically, like Nelson said, it's a go-get-your-guy type of league, and it's $2,500 entry, 12-team league, 20 rounds, and third round reversal for anybody looking at the draft board at home. So let's go.
All right, sounds good. So Matt, why don't you lead us off here? Take a look at the board and tell us which teams you liked, which teams you didn't like, any draft picks you really thought were good, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, just real quick to piggyback off of what Chris said. It is, in my opinion, standalone, the toughest one that I've been in. I haven't done it in a few years. Last time I did it was with my partner Andy Saxon back then. We won it. I went off, left on top. But here's the 2 teams that, just from a build that I really liked. It was Team 8 and Team 1, and I'll explain why. Team 8 pretty much executed the 0 RB, starting out with 4 stud wide receivers. They got a stud tight end and that primo quarterback, which in my opinion, Stroud is. So being able to start that way and then, hit 3 running backs in a row, I think is, a perfect start in that aspect. I mean, maybe the running backs I would have went a little different with who were chosen there. And with Team 1, it's kind of the opposite, where you start off with that uber running back at 1-1 as Chris, planted that flag, and then all of a sudden Breece Hall started going 1 overall in a lot of drafts. And he was able to get that, take Mahomes at 4-1, and then by round 10, still had 3 running backs, 5 wide receivers, again, the elite quarterback, which, some have ranked number 1 in their rankings, and a tight end with extreme upside. So those 2 builds to me stood out, at least the way I like to build them. The only, if we're going to nitpick for like dislikes, like Team 2 and Team 6, I know they're, incredible players. I mean, Team 2 is one of the best baseball and football players out there. But my only dislike with Team 2 is at that 6'11", 7'2" turn. I'm probably going wide receiver instead of taking both Kamara and Jones. I take one of them. I take a receiver there. And then at 8-2, I'm going to take a running back there. That's just the way I like the board. So that's just my critique on that one. And real quick on Team 6, taking Keon Coleman at 8-6 was not my favorite pick there. I would have gone Shakir over him. Even a Jordan Addison I like more. And I'm a Bills fan, and I'm really hoping Coleman's the guy, but I think there's going to be some growing pains maybe I'm dead wrong on this, but that was my thing, because just on the purpose of depth at the wide receiver position, and obviously as stated in this league, there's no value. Everything, gets pushed up. You're basically relying on Coleman and Lockett have to hit to give you that depth. So that's my nitpick there. Favorite value, I mentioned him last week, is J.K. Dobbins at 12-8. This is a team that's a Harbaugh, Roman. They're going to run. Dobbins, as of right now, is healthy. Maybe that doesn't last, but he got him at 12-8. So even if he's not, it's not a pick that's going to kill you. And backing it up with Vidal at 13-5, I thought was great. And with Team 1, I know on the show a couple of weeks ago, I might have sounded like the Hollywood hater. I just like the other receivers more. But to be able to get Hollywood at 8-1, I think that's a perfect price. You're getting that injury discount there. And then, capping off your third running back at 9-12 with Jerome Ford seemed really good. So that was my breakdown on how I saw the board. And there really isn't a bad build here. And again, these are extremely talented players.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I agree with Matt on basically the teams that he likes. I think there's no need to go back over those. I found 3 other teams that I like. I like team 12, team 4, and team 3, probably the best out of what's left. Team 12, I thought, it's not a great position to draft from, but I thought this manager did a really, really nice job of dealing with, working out of the 12 hole. He's got Drake London in the first and Marvin Harrison on that first turn. Then Deebo Samuel, a player I'm very high on that he got at the 301. A lot of people would say maybe that's early, but he's definitely not coming back. I'm a little bit less of a Rashad White fan, but I like the running back there. I think that was the right move. Trey McBride getting that elite tight end in there, and then still being able to come back with Brian Thomas. And then he's got Javonte Williams and Jonathan Brooks. So he's got 2 good running backs. He's got 3 very good wide receivers. He's got a really promising rookie wide receiver, a great tight end. He comes back. He's got, and he's still got Jonathan Brooks, who's kind of a guy who hopefully around midseason starts firing. And then he gets Jaden Daniels at quarterback, which is a really nice pick. He was able to hold off on quarterback that long and get somebody who should be putting up a lot of fantasy points and backing him up with Trevor Lawrence, who's a guy I've been getting more and more into as draft season goes along. I think Lawrence is very, very underrated this draft season. Team 4, I don't normally do 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, but he was able to pull it off. He's got Waddle, Cooper, and Johnson taken in rounds 2, 4, and 5, and that's Deontay Johnson. So he's got 3 solid wide receivers. Jalen Reed, also very solid, which he took in round 6. So after 6 rounds, he's got his 2 good running backs. He's got 4 good wide receivers. Then he goes back with Kittle and Prescott, and he did a nice job filling out the team the rest of the way too. Team 3 went McCaffrey first, took a couple wide receivers after that, Devontae Adams, Zay Flowers. I'm not necessarily in love with the particular players that he took, but structurally it makes sense. Then Kyron Williams, a decent value there in the 4th. Kyle Pitts I really like in the late 5th. Then he comes back with Worthy in the 6th and Jamison Williams in the 7th. The one thing I would say there is I think he needed a better wide receiver than Jamison Williams, a more reliable one. I would have probably taken Hollywood Brown or Cortland Sutton there had it been my team. But structurally, it's a team that looks good. I think he did in his player selection go a different way than I would have a little bit, but I like how he put it together structurally. So yeah, and that's what I got on that. Nelson, why don't you tell us who you liked, who you didn't like, and you can even reveal your team if you want.
Yeah, for me, I'm always watching what other teams are doing and how they're putting their team together. That's just kind of how my mind works as I'm drafting. And I actually think that Team 12 made a mistake because I think when you're drafting, I think you got to be telling a story. And when you're going Harrison and McBride, that tells me that you've already made the decision that you're going to go with an Arizona stack. And on that next turn with Thomas and Javante, I think he's got to skip one of those guys and take Kyler Murray there. So I actually think that's a mistake because at that point, you have Harrison. Why take McBride? Why not just take Kelsey or Kincaid over McBride if your intention was never to stack Arizona? So that's one thing that I look at it, and I get it. Like sometimes we're drafting and we look at players and we realize, oh, I got two players on the same team. It was unintentional, but at the same time, when you have the opportunity to take the quarterback at a decent price, he wouldn't have been overreaching at that point. I think it makes sense. So right off the bat, I was watching Team 12 because I was right next to him, and it threw me off when he didn't take Kyler there. The other thing I wanted to point out, I didn't really go over like, what team I liked, what team I disliked. I wanted more to look at players that fell and players that moved up, because like I mentioned in the intro, that's what I focus on. It's the first confined league. It's a big league. There's heavy hitters in this league. I think it's a super sharp draft. So take a look at where Kyren and Pacheco went in this draft, and that tells me all I need to know about those players. Okay. So that should kind of give you an idea of how the room felt about those two running backs. And that's more of the temperature that I was expecting. I was expecting those guys to fall into the fourth round. And I think that's kind of like the range that they belong in, not reaching and taking them in the second round over, a legit wide receiver. I think that's a mistake this year. So
yeah, what happened to that whole Pacheco second round love that we saw for 2 weeks, Nelson?
That quickly. So it's funny. So like in my Discord chat, people asked, hey, you moved P. Ryan up your rankings quite a bit, but the dude just got cut by Denver. Why? And I said this, and I'm not trying to say I'm the smartest guy in the room, but I said P. Ryan as a free agent is more valuable than P. Ryan on Denver. So to me, at the end of the day, like I looked at it as he could end up going to a much better situation than what he was in Denver. And I think he couldn't have landed in a better spot than Kansas City. And I like Pacheco. I should say past tense. I liked Pacheco. Okay. I thought he had an opportunity to, between the goal line work, his regular rushing, and with CEH and basically, it looks like he's sick. Something's going on with him. He was just put on IR on just a little while ago. So I thought there was an opportunity for Pacheco to take on quite a bit of the passing down work right from week one. Once P. Ryan signed, that's it. It's the Flintstone hit the brakes. Okay. He's not getting that passing down work at the end of the day. People can still look at it and try to, be positive and think that that's not going to be the case. Watch on Thursday night. P. Ryan's only been there for a short period of time, but they're going to trust him over Pacheco in the passing game. I think he's going to be very involved. And at that point, what's Pacheco's upside? I'm not taking him in the third round. Like that's where I talk about like running backs in that third round area. It's got to be very specific because otherwise I look at those third round running backs no different than the guy I'm going to get in the seventh round. So
Nelson,
go ahead.
Question for you. Do you think this could turn into a two-way squeeze at all with Steele taking some of the goal line work?
I saw that suggestion by the beat writer from Kansas City that Steele, because Kansas City hasn't particularly been very good in short yardage in the past couple of years. So that is a possibility. Let's wait till Thursday night and see what happens. And then listen, it doesn't help us for drafts, before Thursday, but after Thursday, obviously we can make adjustments. I'm just telling you, out of caution, I wouldn't be drafting Pacheco in the third round. I think that's a situation you want to leave alone. P. Ryan 100% throws a monkey wrench into things. You can say P. Ryan's a scrub, but at the end of the day, he's very good in the passing game. He's good in the screen game. He can pass protect. He's going to be involved.
All right, makes sense. I want to press the Pacheco thing just a little bit more, though. Let's say Pacheco on Thursday night only gets 2 targets, and he gets maybe half of the runs inside of the 5, and they give the other half to Steele. And he comes out with a stat line like 15 for 71 and one catch for 6 yards. What do you think happens to him in the Friday and Saturday drafts then?
He takes
end of the fourth,
I think,
end of the 4th to the 5th. I already think we're going to see Jacobs move ahead. Yeah, I already think Jacobs will move ahead of these 2 guys that went before him in this draft. I think you're going to start seeing Jacobs as that hot name in the late 3rd round, early 4th round, ahead of Pacheco and Kyron. And if Pacheco bombs in that Thursday night game, you'll see some 5th round shares of Pacheco probably.
Yeah, and for me, I think the biggest takeaway here, obviously you guys covered the Pacheco. I agree on that. Is Samaje Perine and his emergence, and where's he going in these drafts? I think I don't know where it's not high enough, because I keep moving him up. I went from 14, 15 to 13. I might take him in the 12th in this draft I'm doing now to complete this KC stack I got going. So that to me is really the biggest thing. If you listen to the beat writers, Andy Reid, I think he's definitely taking this Jerick McKinnon role. And I was big on Pacheco like Nelson, so he obviously really gets hurt by this.
Yeah, sometimes things are not so obvious for us when it comes to football and connecting it with fantasy football. And then there's sometimes that it's pretty obvious and it's staring us in the face, and we have to make that adjustment. It's okay. Like I said, I was high on Pacheco. I've got him, fairly high in my rankings, but he's a fade for me. I'm not interested in him in this mess. I think that, P. Ryan was brought in there for a reason, at any other running back almost that comes in to kind of like be a backup, I would have been okay with, but P. Ryan specifically, I'm not interested in that. Sometimes you're just better off avoiding those landmines.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Makes sense. All right. Chris, what do you got on this draft?
All right. Where do I start here, guys? Let me touch on my team real quick and the mindset here. First off, it's a difficult build, and for anybody looking at this team that maybe says, this doesn't look like a Vaccaro team, it really doesn't. And I had to adjust that. And keep in mind, this is a standalone league, so I'm going to play it a little differently than I would a primetime league or a tournament field. Once I started off with my elite running back at 1, okay, in my mind, I'm going 3 receivers, maybe even 4 in the next couple rounds. But I do get sniped for a couple receivers that I'm high on at the 3-4 turn. And once those receivers went and I felt like the cliff came at the receiver position, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to go to plan B here, and I'm going to get ahead of the field with my number 1 quarterback and win a standalone league, or try to win a standalone league here, beat 11 other owners with my QB1. I already have my RB1. Let me get my QB1, and let me hope that some value falls to me at that 5-6 turn to complete my wide receiver room. Now, did that work out exactly the way I planned? No, it didn't, because receivers went hot and heavy as expected in this league here. But I tried to make the most of it, and I had no problem knowing that in my back pocket I should be able to get Watson and Jackson Smith and Jigba at that 5-6 turn to complete my room. Now, when you sit back and look at it, am I behind at the wide receiver position as a whole compared to the other teams in this league, a lot of other teams in this league? Yes, but you got to keep in mind that I feel like I've got an edge at the running back position, edge at the quarterback position, And when you build a team out like this, out of the one hole, starting with a running back, like I said, it is difficult, but you're punting something. And I tried to punt tight end, and I still landed Brock Bowers, who I have as a top 10 tight end. So overall, there you go. Nelson, you got the dogs up to control over there, buddy? They always make an appearance. Last thing I'll say on my team before we move on is the reason for that Hollywood Brown pick, which I did love. And you see him going anywhere between picks 75 to 100 in a lot of our weekend drafts. To me, this bailed me out at the wide receiver room. And sometimes you got to play ahead. You got to try and play catch up at the wide receiver position. And by getting an injured player that people are pushing down a couple rounds on their draft board right now, I already had 4 wide receivers locked in. If I could get a Hollywood Brown, who without injury would be a 5th or 6th round wide receiver, stash him, get through the first 2, 3, 4 weeks even, and then bring him back into my starting lineup, I think that'll help out my wide receiver 3 or 4 position. So looking ahead, hopefully my wide receiver room could, work out like that. Teams that I loved, I really thought teams 8, 9, and 10. Frank Mamola did a great job. Edelman, Mike Edelman in the 9 hole, and Nelson and Theo in the 10. I liked the way they built their teams, all 3 of them, and I think that's the sweet spot. I've been talking about it in drafts right now. If you're in that 6 through 10 spot, teams just look better to me if you do it the right way, and all 3 of these guys did. They come out with 3 wide, all of them. Frank Mamola lands Edelman. Let's start with Edelman at team 8. He goes 4 wide. He gets 4 monsters, still lands an elite top 3 tight end in Kelsey and an elite top 5 quarterback in Stroud. And then he does what you're supposed to do. He builds out the running back room. He goes all green straight down while still adding 1 more wide receiver that I guess he likes a lot in Wicks. Team 9. Frank Mamola, he does 3 monster receivers, lands what most people have as the elite tight end 1 in Laporta, which we see in most drafts now falling to that mid to late 4th round. He gets good value on Laporta, still lands a solid RB1 in James Cook in round 5, which, we say if you're going to go out strong wide receiver 3, a 3 wide receiver build or 4 wide receiver build out of the gate, and you could still clip one of those running backs before the tier comes to an end in the Cooks, the Walkers, the Rashad Whites, the Kenneth, Mixons. It works out perfectly for them. And then he gets an elite quarterback, elite top 5 quarterback in Lamar Jackson. Same build pretty much for Nelson and Theo in the 10 hole. So, he goes back and gets a good running back room, even being a heavy wide receiver build with Walker, Pollard, and Brown. So he's got everything he needs there. He gets the cheat code in Taysom Hill as his starting tight end. One thing I will say, I do not like the TJ Hawkinson pick at all for anybody drafting Hawkinson. I don't think we see him until late October, early November. I think people are not, knocking him down boards enough to carry a tight end that you're not going to get anything out of probably for the first 6 to 8 weeks, then come back into an offense and, reacquaint himself with a new quarterback. He might be too far behind in the season. It just might be a lost season for Hawkinson. So I'll just say that. And the last thing I'll say is Team 12 we talked about earlier. I think after seeing all the live New York drafts, guys, and maybe, you'll agree, everybody's been in, these high stakes drafts all week. I think last week I said, if you're back there in that 12 hole, you got to come out with at least 1 running back. Well, I think I might be changing my mind here because seeing what is available and how fast these wide receivers are going, you might not get what you're looking for, to come back to you at 25. I think there was a time in draft season this last month where you were getting one of those elite wide receiver 2s at 25. And I just think the build looks better when you start off with receiver back there. So I'll just say that the Jonathan Brooks pick, I'm in on Jonathan Brooks. I like him, but that's more of a tournament field pick for me. I don't want to stash him in a standalone league. So I didn't really like that build.
All right, sounds good. I want to kind of circle back, Chris, to you took Zamir White in the 7th, which he's a guy that's out of favor with a lot of people. And I was just talking yesterday morning with Scott Pianowski. We were kind of comparing notes as we come into the last week of the draft, and we were trying to figure out what to do with Zamir White, because both of us were sort of throwing up our hands of, what do we make of this situation? And, kind of where we came down a little bit is, neither one of us is really sold on him, but you look at who else is his competition, and it's kind of hard not to be sold on him by default. What were your thoughts on taking him there?
My thoughts there were, first off, if you go back a month and a half ago, Zamir White was the hottest name on the board. Everybody was trying to get Zamir White on their team to the point where he was the first running back going in that 6th round range before all the other running backs, the Javantes, Pollards, and on, Montgomery, were coming off the board. Everybody wanted Zamir White as the high upside guy. And then what happened? Preseason started. They split carries, him and Madison, and then Zamir White just kept falling. I think groupthink came into play here. I think everybody started overreacting, and now all of a sudden Zamir White is the guy that nobody wants. Everybody's pushing him down, and instead of being the first guy in that whole RB2 tier that everybody wanted, now he's the last guy. Now, were there other running backs on the board in that range that went before him that I wanted? Sure. But I was more than happy to take Zamir White at that turn there. I think he'll be a solid RB2. I think people are going running for the hills, scared of him. And I think he's one of those guys that people are going to look back and say, wait, I think we overreacted to that August news and outlook on him. And the last thing I'll say on Zamir White is if you don't feel great about him and you draft him in the 80s or 90s now, where sometimes he goes, move Alexander Madison up late, round 14, 15, 16. Take the backfield, see how it plays out. If Zamir White goes down, now you have Alexander Madison in the 16th round. That might fit the scheme a little bit better, but I'm not running for the hills on Zamir White. I'm glad you brought that up, Dan, because he's one of the guys I wanted to cover. That I'm still
is this AI
value? Yeah.
Is this AI right now? Because that is not Chris on the screen. He is drafting a slow running back that can't catch the ball, and he's recommending another slow running back to move up in the draft. What the heck is going on right now?
Yeah, Nelson, but look at this build that, the team that I have, when you come back around, give me a guy that's going to touch the ball, get 18 carries and goal line.
After week one, you're going to be starting Ford over Zamir White.
Yeah, my only argument.
No, time out. Nelson, on this team, Jerome Ford was part of the plan. And this team with getting Jerome Ford was huge for me because maybe right off the bat, for as long as Jerome Ford, there's no Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford's my RB2 on this team. I'm going to actually sit back probably. And unless I flex Zamir White, if one of these receivers, like if a Christian Watson has a bad Friday night game and I need to use Zamir White right off the bat, Jerome Ford's my RB2 on this team early in the season. I think the value on Jerome Ford, I've been saying it for a month and a half now, is absolutely out of control. Jerome Ford should be a 5th round, 6th round running back for the first month of the season being drafted as him. People are knocking him down the board because of, what happens when Nick Chubb comes back? Well, I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking, give me the starting running back that could catch passes in a Cleveland offense behind a top 5 offensive line. That sounds like a top 5 round running back to me. So Jerome Ford completed this team for me. Okay, I get to sit back and see how Zamir White plays out for the first couple of weeks. And if I'm right and Zamir White is an 18 carry a game running back, when Jerome Ford, if he falters or Chubb comes back down the line, then I could bring Zamir White in. But this team is Breece Hall and Jerome Ford for September.
Yeah. Here's my counter on this with Zamir White. I think the problem is I think it has the vibes of Alexander Madison from last year. I mean, the volume is there. But, I mean, Alexander Madison, a lot of people loved him last year, and he had plenty of opportunities. It was all there. He had goal line, touches, and really no competition at that point, and that didn't work out. I'm not I'm not really a Zamir White guy because he doesn't catch the ball. He's not particularly fast, but I get the argument on the volume side and the type of, offense the Raiders want to run. So, I see that. I'm just going to play contrarian here to the argument. And as to why he's going where he's going, I just get that Madison vibe feel, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the volume is just too much and he wins on that.
And to answer Chris's question, because I know Chris asked me, where if I'm him in his shoes, where do I go? And he knows the answer. Like, I'm taking Chase Brown there all day long. That's the guy that I'm going to bet on, is the guy that, explosive, can catch the ball, part of a good offense. Probably will be in a committee with Moss to start off the year, but we know Zamir White is going to be in a committee. He's going to be off the field on passing downs.
Nelson, do you take? I'm just looking at the board. I remember being on the clock when I took Zamir White, and like I said, that whole round, guys, you could see it is all green coming towards me, right? I don't get Javonte, Pollard, Connor, Swift, Monty, Stevenson, Jones. All of them go. I'm obviously hoping for any of those guys. So you're telling me that you've got Najee. Well, Nelson, we know how you feel about Chase Brown, but Najee and Chase Brown are the only guys that are in consideration at that turn as my RB2. I can't take Jonathan Brooks as my RB2. I'm not seeing him until October. So, a lot of times, guys, you got to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, and when you're in the one hole and you're getting sniped on a lot of, the tiers dry out. And this is what I was talking about the last couple of weeks. And I've seen it unfold. The top three picks here, as much as they're great because you get to control the board in terms of who you start with, you get your CD Lamb, you get one of the three elite backs or Tyreek Hill, you get that big, monster player to start the draft. But the toughest position right now, I know nobody likes 11 or 12, but to me, the top three picks are also really hard because the tiers just break off. The tiers break off at the end of the second. The tiers break off again at the end of the 34 turn. You got to you're at everyone's mercy at the 5-6 turn on what's coming back to you at receiver. So each round straight down the board, when you're in the top two holes, you're at the mercy of the board and you're hoping that you're in a weaker table and a couple mistakes are made, 4 or 5 players that shouldn't go ahead of you happen to come off the board and, you catch a little bit of a break at the turns here. In the New York Super, it was dumb of me to expect that, and it didn't happen. And, like I said, I tried to make the most of it with what I had.
But Chris, one question I have for you. Like, you were able to get Ford at 9-12, and I put that down as one of the better values in the draft. And you're saying he should be like, say, a 5th-round running back. Now, I know you're using ADP here, but especially in this league, this format, for me, I probably go Ford if I feel that strongly over Zamir White to not risk not getting him. Like, what if I don't get Ford there?
Maddie, 100%. I could tell you this. When I was on the clock at that turn, the 3 players I was in my head that I was going to take were Zamir White, Hollywood Brown, and Ford. And obviously I can only get 2 of them. And I said, is it more important I felt like I was behind at wide receiver, like I said, to get a Hollywood Brown and stash him for a couple weeks and hope he's back. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I had him with Mahomes, right? Mahomes is on this team. Or do I go double running back and try and, build out like that? And as much as I loved Ford, I said, let me get, I just went the other way. I said, there's no shot I get Zamir White at 108. Okay. I said, there's a 50-50 shot or less than that. I thought of getting Ford at 108. And I rolled the dice that hopefully Ford, I didn't have a good feel of how the rest of the people at the table viewed Jerome Ford. Okay. That's, I guess, the best way I can answer it. I know I'm not getting Zamir White there. And I think I have a way better shot of getting Ford to come back to me. It did. And to me, that completed my team big time, because without Ford on this team, I would have hated my running back room.
I don't hate the pick. I mean, I think I think it's a defensible pick there. Because as you said, it kind of comes down to him or Najee Harris and Chase Brown, and you order the players how you like them. I'm not too concerned about Madison. I mean, that guy's got less juice than the entire Sahara Desert, so it's he's not a guy I'm really concerned about at all. The only guy I'd really be concerned about is what Dylan Labe or Amir Abdullah, and they're never gonna. I don't think they're going to get the volume that they would need to overtake Zamir White. So I think White is pretty safe. I think this team wants to run the ball. My worst fear on it is just that the Raiders are just a terrible offense and they just really crater. But otherwise, I think Zamir White just kind of by default is going to be a major part of this offense. I mean, unless they make a trade or something for a running back, during the middle of the season, I just don't see who is able to overtake him. So. I don't love Zamir White, but he's a pick that I would definitely have, in the top of my head as well, like Chris did. I'd be thinking hard about him and Najee and Chase Brown. I might have gone Chase Brown there too, but I can't fault the logic.
Can I ask one question? I know everybody has Najee as like, I don't know. I'm looking back at last year. And he had 70 more touches or so than Warren. They had basically the exact amount of fantasy points. And what saved Najee was those last 2 weeks when he got the only 2 weeks that he scored 20 points. So I know I just hear it a lot that Najee's the guy, Najee's this. I mean, Warren on every metric just is so much better. He's better in the eye test. Najee did look better last year. I will say that. But this is the last year for him. So I just don't understand why I'm just hearing that mantra a lot. Not taking it on you guys. I'm just saying I'm hearing it in podcasts or on tweets. So just the view that I'm getting and why I like Warren so much, I just wanted to put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have very little Najee personally.
You're not going to hear an argument out of me.
I have zero Najee, and obviously me passing him shows my hand on where I am with Najee. So, but yeah, Chase Brown definitely was in consideration as well, and that was a toss up to me.
All right, sounds good. I think we've probably covered that about as extensively as we need to. Any last thoughts on this, or shall we move on to the auction?
I think the last thoughts are: don't draft Pacheco, don't draft Kyron Williams, and try. Chris was in a weak moment, and he drafted Zamir White.
Yeah, I'll just say this: look at the second round there, guys. About how Barkley and Gibbs are falling to the middle of the second round in a lot of these drafts. You might get on a draft board where guys 9 through 12 are just all about yellow, and they want their receivers, and that's going to push Gibbs and Barkley to the middle of the second round and maybe even later as we go to this final week of drafts, just because everybody wants to get their hands on those wide receivers at the end of the first round. So that'll be that.
That's a good point. The only other thing I'd say is if you take a look at rounds 11 on, you can really see that people are getting their guys. The ADP is totally out the window. If you want Jalen McMillan, you're going to grab him in the, what was it, the 13th round there, 14th round. It's just the way you got to play it. So you can't wait around anymore.
Well, I mean, Jalen McMillan jumped the shark now. I mean, I love this kid. I know me and Vaccaro have talked over the last couple of months how he's been, incorrectly drafted by the NFL. I mean, he basically put up the same numbers as Odunze in 2022. Was hurt last year. I think he's better than Polk. But, once Matthew Berry's calling him Jalen McMillions, you pretty much know that player has jumped the shark, and you pretty much better be in on him at a much higher price. Before we go to the auction board, I just want to take 1 minute. I'm doing a slow main event in the FFPC. It was the last one of the year. They made it a 1 hour. I picked from the 7. I just want to pick your guys' brain. I think it's pretty cool if we can do it on air because I'm up next. I started Garrett Wilson at 1-7. I went Trey McBride, Rashee Rice, Patrick Mahomes, T. Higgins, Xavier Worthy, Christian Watson. So I had no running backs through 7 rounds. I'm a big Warren guy. I started Jalen Warren. It would have been between Jerome Ford or Tajay Spears. Ford went before me. I got Spears as my RB2. Jalen Wright as my RB3. It was between him or Dobbins, but the Jalen Wright possibility, I have so much Dobbins. My question is this. I'm picking next at 11-7. Nick Chubb is there. I don't know when he's coming back. I saw his leg blow up. I'm really not excited about that. Is it crazy to take P. Ryan at 11-7 with this Kansas City stack I have? Braylon Allen's there, Ray Davis, Vidal, Ty Chandler are like the other big guys that are left, the other running backs, I should say. Does anybody think I'm crazy if I go to complete this stack at 11-7?
I don't think it's crazy, but I would probably push it because I think I can. I think I could push it one more round.
I mean, the first thing that stuck out to me is you were thinking about Dobbins, and who was the other guy?
I took Jalen Wright over Dobbins. I have so much Dobbins.
Yeah,
and
I
love Wright.
Yeah, that's not close for me. I'm going to take the guy that I think is got the upside and the juice. And then
I went right on that one.
Yeah, and then at this pick, I actually think that I would go Chandler because I think he's going to have a role right from week 1. And you went true zero running back, so you don't really have like even an RB1 that you're really comfortable with, and your RB2 is sketchy. So I would go with the Chandler pick, and with the thoughts that P. Ryan, you should be able to get him in the 12th round.
Okay, but one quick thing, I'm not really considering my running back sketchy though. I love both those players. I think at some point they both supersede the other guys. But that's from a zero running back perspective. I just thought it was worth bringing up for a quick second.
Sounds good.
Thank you for your responses.
Yep, no problem. All right, so we are on to the Super here.
Hold on, Dan. Before we go on to the Super.
All right.
Oh, baby. Nelson's got late breaking.
No breaking news. I wanted to ask you guys, what did you think of the Chase pick at 10? Because we got drafts coming up here. Everyone's got drafts in at home, online, and in Vegas. What are you doing there with that pick? Let's discuss Jamar Chase. It's now Monday. We're less than a week away. What are we doing here?
All right. Let me just say this. First off, he's the 10th pick for me now. Okay. If I'm on the clock and I'm in the 10 hole and he comes to me, I'm going to take him. Okay. But I'm going elsewhere at 7, 8, and 9. So I'll just wrap that up just like that, Nelson.
Yeah, for me, I'm sorry, Dan. Real quick, the one thing that's concerning that this might last, I think they get it done this week before week 1, but the fact that he wants 1 penny more than Justin Jefferson, I don't know. Just because the Bengals always act poor, like they have no money whatsoever. But I'm with Chris at pick 10. I have to take him.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson earns. He deserves more than Chase Brown, in my opinion. But be that as it may, yeah, I'm still probably taking him at 10 just because I don't really love any of the options after that. And I would just take my swing for the fences with Chase and hope it works out.
Nelson, if you're sitting there at 10 and obviously the big 9 go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you? I know you're not going to go running back. I know you're not going to take any of the 3 major running backs, but do you really have the balls to take London or Harrison over Chase?
If I'm in a 10K draft this weekend in Vegas and he's not signed by then, I'm not taking him in a 10K draft at 10.
But he's got no leverage. He's got 2 years left on the deal. He doesn't have 1 year left on the deal. There's no way he's going to sit out and say, okay, I'm just like, it's not like, oh, let me get through the year and everything. He's got 2 years left. He's got
Isn't
no
he the guy that
leverage.
sat out his whole junior year?
He shows up on the
Isn't he the guy that sat
Say
out
that again?
his junior year in college and for quote unquote, COVID reasons?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think he
Fair.
does have some leverage in
I
this.
think money talks.
I think he has the leverage in the fact that he's got this rookie deal contract, and he's going to sign a deal that's probably going to pay him 1 cent more than Justin Jefferson. So he's going to recoup that money. It's not like he's giving up $1 million a paycheck, I don't think. I mean, per game. I think it's much less than that. It's a small amount, being that it's on that rookie deal where he can recoup it, so he can sit out for a bit. That's what really scares me. And yeah, if I was in a 10K this weekend, I'd have a hard time if he's not signed.
And we're not even talking about, are we worried that he hasn't been in camp all month and he signs, let's say he signs Saturday night, the day before the game or whatever. And now he might miss week 1. Okay. So your first round pick, you're already missing week 1. And is there a chance for injury?
Yeah.
I think we've seen that in the past. I don't know the math on it and the statistics on it, but we've seen guys that kind of skip camp, seem to get, injured. They have these calf strains, hammies, things like that.
I think right now in drafts, the 10 spot is either, depending on how you view the whole Chase thing, is either the best spot or the worst. It's either the easiest pick to make or the worst draft spot to have.
Yeah.
That's the way you got to view the 10 spot right now. Probably my last KDS, for the final week here is the 10 spot. Nelson, you can't be too thrilled, man. You landed Jamar Chase in the New York Super.
Yeah, well, I was doing it with
Countdown
Theo.
is on.
Yeah, I was doing it with Theo, and it was last Friday, so we still had a few more days to, for Chase to sign. But we're here Monday and nothing going on. So
yeah,
I hear you.
And this is how the situation's changed by day. Like right now if I was drafting a main event in either format, I would probably still just go ahead and take Chase. I do understand where Nelson's coming from. In a 10K league, I might be a little more hesitant to pull the trigger on him there. But if we get to Wednesday or Thursday and he's still not signed and he's still not practicing, then I'm going to start rethinking, even in a tournament league. Do I really want to do this, or am I going to push somebody else up there? And that's
I also think if you're a volume player, you take that chance. If you have a lot of teams, if you're a guy that has 1 or 2 teams and you're in the 10 hole, you're probably passing on Chase. You don't want your year blown up like that. If you're any of us guys and you're in the 10 hole and you got one of those 10 spots and Chase is, falls to you, you're pulling the trigger.
You're possibly taking, say this, you're talking about this weekend in a 10K or even in these prime times. If Rashee Rice goes off on Thursday night and has, 8 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown or 2, I mean, where the hell is he going? Is he at the end of the first round? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So he might be going at 10, 11, 12. So, I mean, a lot's going to change. And hopefully this year we do get it with these 2 awesome games. Because, I mean, last year's game was kind of boring. I mean, I got pretty drunk. I mean, Chris could vouch for that. But it was pretty boring.
All right, guys.
It's going to be wild because of all the star power in these 2 games.
Yep, that is a good point. There's going to be a lot more.
I won't go through all the names. You guys all know them. But you have 2 full games that drafts are going to be so changed upside down for that Friday and Saturday of live drafts. It's going to be really crazy. You're really just going off the fly and having a feel of how the draft board changes after these 2 games and bad performances and great performances. It's going to be wild.
All the quarterbacks on those teams go early in drafts. So, and you've got so many high profile players on those teams. It's going to be chaos after Friday night.
Yep.
Yeah, last thing real quick. I have a team where I was looking at it where I got Rice, I got Watson, Zay Flowers, and Kupp. And I'm like, and I think somebody else. And I'm like, Kupp might not even start for me if these guys blow up. So, I mean, that's how things might change.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the super auction. We want to get to this too because this is a fun one, and we do have a lot of auction player listeners and viewers. So we want to take a look at this and see what people think. So, Chris, you want to kind of take us through how the super auction works, because both Chris and Nelson were in this as well. So just tell us a little bit about how this particular auction works.
Yeah, 12-team league again, $200 budget, and $2,500 up for grabs here. It's basically the equivalent of the New York Super, but in auction style, which through the years, guys, I've absolutely come to love doing auctions. Everybody says the same thing. You could go get whatever players and combinations you want, but strategy wise with these auctions, I never struggled more putting together a game plan than this year in auctions, just because of the significant drop off at price levels for each position and finding out the right combination to the right combination to the safe, putting the puzzle together for this. It was kind of like once the draft started, you kind of had to go on the fly. Nelson could talk about it just as well, what his thought process was putting this together. But, let's get into it. It was really fascinating to me being in these auctions in New York here, the way it played out and what I've learned and probably what Nelson learned as well.
Yeah, I love these. And last year I didn't do the 2,500, but I did the 1,500. And I had some success last year in that league. And what's interesting with the auctions, it's all about timing, and it's when a guy gets nominated that will affect what he goes for a price. I just think that what's unique too is the fact that you're going to get into bidding wars with one or two individuals. If two guys are after the same player and you've made up your mind, like, I want this guy, there's going to be a bidding war on that player. So that's the part that I find unique with like auctions.
I'll also throw in this as an example. I think what Nelson is referring to. Let's just say the three quarterbacks. Let's say the big three: Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Mahomes at the top, and they're in like a price tier of their own. Okay, let's say Mahomes and Hurts go off the board. And you've got 2, 3, 4 guys at that table that their plan coming in was to get one of the elite 3 quarterbacks. Well, there's going to be a bidding war. And you don't want to be the guy at the table that was your plan to get an elite quarterback. And you waited out on the first 2. And now you and other guys are going after that third quarterback. And you don't want to back away from him, because now it changes your whole plan on the fly. Like, you came in, you budgeted, just say $22 for that one of those 3 elite quarterbacks. Well, now, and you could be an hour into the auction and you missed out on other guys that you might have liked or whatever. You were just waiting for Josh Allen to come out and you were going to go get him. But 2 other guys at the table were like, all right, I'm getting my elite top 3 quarterback. Well, now 22 becomes 27, 28, 29, and it happened all day long. It happened at the receiver position with the elite receivers. It happened at the running back position. It's just, you don't want to get caught chasing the last guy in any tier. So you want to be first before you're last, is what I'm sure Nelson's referring to as well.
Yeah, if I can just jump in real quick on that. Yeah, Chris said it perfectly. Last guy in a tier is almost always going to go for more than the earlier guys in the tier. So, when I'm doing an auction, if there's a particular guy that I want in that tier, I'm going to make sure I nominate him before he's the last guy in the tier, because I think I'm going to get a better deal that way. But if I just want a player from that tier and I'm less concerned about who it is, then I'll just start bidding on, the first couple 3 guys who come up from that tier, because a lot of times people will be a little bit hesitant and then the price gets set and now people have something to anchor off of. And so, you'll find, if the first guy went for, $53, the other guys in a similar tier are also going to go for around $53 until you get to that last guy and he might go for more. So I'll try to make sure I'm on one of those first guys and get my guy out of that tier. And then I can sit back and watch a couple other people bid each other up and, snicker a little.
Yeah.
Nelson, what was your biggest observation? If you could go back in time after going through this auction, how would you have changed anything you did? Meaning what you're like, I didn't realize it was going to be like that. And if I could go back, I would have did this or waited on that. What would you have changed? Because I know my answer here.
Well, I will say we both had the advantage of having the $1,500 draft in the morning. So we kind of had an idea of how the 2,500 was going to go. Each one's unique, but my observation was to wait on your RB2 or wait on running back altogether, because I felt like
words out of my mouth. Yeah.
There was a lot of value at running back. Waiting on wide receiver was not a good idea. If you were the guy that was going to go spend up on Bijan, Breece Hall, McCaffrey, and you thought you were going to, save and get some value on receivers, there was no value on receivers in these drafts, because, look at it this way. You have the big, the big 7 wide receivers in the first round.
Yes.
So you got the big 7. Most people in the room, they want one of those guys. If your plan is you're not going to get one of those guys, you're going to go for the other tier. Well, the guys that missed out on one of those stud wide receivers, the bidding is going to get heavy for that second and third tier wide receiver. So you're never getting a good value at the wide receiver position. Then you have 1 or 2 teams that, are sitting on their hands throughout the draft. And meanwhile, all these receivers are going off the board and you're waiting. And all of a sudden you look up and you're like, oh shit. I'm trying to use an example. I got Deontay Johnson as my wide receiver 1. Okay. For a few bucks. And you're like, I got to fill out my wide receiver room, and you're looking at the inventory and you're like, oh shit, I gotta bid for these guys or it's gonna look ugly. Well, guess what? There's gonna be other guys in that room that are seeing where it dips and the cliff comes, and they're gonna be bidding on those guys. So that was my observation, was you wanted to be in on wide receivers early, and you needed to lay back and just be patient at running back.
I couldn't agree more. That was my observation as well, Nelson. And I'll also say this: when you get down to the end game and the money goes so fast early on with who's buying, all the big 7 receivers all went for $56 or more. The big 3 running backs, 57 or more as well. Once you have those guys, my plan going in was to get 2 first rounders. I wanted to get either Bijan or Breece. I knew it would be around $57 to $60 on either one of them. And then I was going to try and clip a back end wide receiver, maybe like a Garrett Wilson or AJ Brown, for maybe like that 55 range. They all went a couple bucks more. And then I was going to try and hit those middle round guys, the 5th round wide receivers, 4th round wide receivers. And I'll tell you what, price wise, if you build it like that and you could get 2 guys, the whole 4th and 5th round wide receiver guys that go in snake drafts, we're all between $15 and $21. And when you look back, it's not a bad strategy if you skip your elite wide receiver 1s just to make a wide receiver room of 3 or 4 of those guys. Give me, if it's Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, and Ayuk, just say whatever. You're spending like a total of $60 to $65 on those 3 really good receivers. Would you rather have that, or would you rather have $60 Justin Jefferson? And I think that's what you gotta weigh a little bit. But the other thing I'll just say is going through these 2 auctions. The 7th and 8th round running backs that we all know the 8 or 10 names of those. If you can show a little patience at the end game, when everyone's in between that $15 to $30 range, if you can hold off and stay around $30, those running backs that should be going probably for $8 to $12, they drop down to $4 or $5, and you could get 2 or 3 of them if you have the money saved other than just having one of them. So that's my observation. If I could have did it over again, I would have held out another 10 or 15 bucks, probably would have picked off a really solid RB2 or RB3 for my team, and saved $4 or $5 extra on getting them at the end.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And, you know, I just want to take you guys through, I don't know whose team was whose or anything like that. So I thought one interesting build was Team 12, where they spent looks like $153 on 3 wide receivers. You know, I know there's stars and scrubs, and that's a good strategy, but what do you guys think about how that team came together? Was that, was that one of your teams, and do you like that team at all?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so no, it wasn't one of either of our teams, but it did stand out to me. I actually did like it just because of what that's Edelman's team, what he was able to do at the running back room. I think you could actually get away if you have $40 or $50. You can actually make a solid wide receiver, a solid running back room with these 6th and 7th round running backs. And he did that with Aaron Jones and Najee Harris. And he obviously went all in at receiver. He's got the monster receivers. He doesn't have much of a bench, right? But in these leagues, sometimes you're just going for, like you said, Dan, the stars and scrubs and loading up your starting lineup, hoping you get healthy. Maybe you have one piece on your bench to bring in as a flex player, and that's it. But, he spent $10 total on his quarterbacks. He got 2 good ones. Spent $10 total at his tight end position and made the tight end room work as well. So, I kind of did like that team.
I will say he needs Hollywood to come back, because
that's a good observation with Hollywood. I like flex, that. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, his flex is ugly.
Yeah, I wrote that down, actually, Nelson. Good point with picking out that Hollywood. And maybe that was probably his strategy was I'll get Hollywood on the cheap. I'll get through the first couple weeks when there's no bye weeks, right? I'll stick with my starting lineup, and then I get a cheap Hollywood to come back into this team. So he didn't spend – Hollywood was one of those guys I thought you had to kind of try and, focus on maybe not getting, but he had to be in your plan a little bit, because he's not going to go for $16 like he would have if he's fully healthy. You're getting him at $6 to $8, and you just got to sit him out. In an auction, you can afford to do that.
All right.
What else stood out to you? What else team stood out to you guys?
Anything
I thought 5 and 6 were very nicely executed. They got some good prices. The whole team came together pretty well. Team 5, you got JSN, Devonta Smith, Brandon Ayuk, and Diggs, and you're not spending a lot there at wide receiver, but you got a pretty good room. And at running
Dan,
back,
that was my team. I'm sorry, no, I didn't want to cut in. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I just like how this was put together. It makes a lot of sense to me. I thought it was just a nice build overall. Team 6, the H-Hand pick I was a little bit less excited about, but everything else kind of, to me, that he could have maybe gone a different way there, because the flex is something that, he's not real good in the flex. I'd have maybe downgraded a little bit at that that running back position, upgraded a little bit elsewhere for the flex, but also a pretty well put together team. So what teams stood out to you guys as being really good, having gone through this auction? Who did you, other than your own teams, who did you walk away impressed by?
Nelson, you want to take that one first, buddy?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Team 6 and Team 9. Zuka in the 6 hole with that's Josh Allen. I liked what he did. He got Tyreek Hill, Drake London, and Chris Godwin, 3 monster receivers with a solid flex in Khalil Shakir, while still spending less than $50 on his running backs, his top 2 running backs, which was basically a 2nd round A-Chain and a 4th round Walker, with an elite quarterback in Josh Allen. So I liked what he did there. He got a couple of nice pieces on his bench that he can use as well, because he pretty much spent all his money on his starting lineup. But I still like Singletary and Hubbard as Chuba Hubbard as his running backs on the bench. And I believe he got one decent receiver to fill in. But I like what he did there. He got Njoku, top 10 tight end as well for cheap. So I like the way he put his team together. And then Billy Waz in Team 9, I thought he did a great job. I really liked his team with that is the Lamar Jackson team. I thought he pretty much put everything. He got ETN and Kamara, starting running backs, spent less than 60 for 2 top 5 round running backs, and then 3 monster receivers, all top 5 round guys, with the elite tight end in Sam Laporta, the number 1. So when you put that all together, I really liked what he did. So those were the 2 teams I thought were the most solid to me.
Who's his flex though?
Who? Billy's?
Yeah.
Billy's got
Eckler?
Yeah, I guess Eckler. Yeah, I mean, listen,
it's
again,
ideal.
I felt like there was so much money thrown out in this league, and the prices early were so heavy that a lot of teams don't have good depth on their bench. I'm kind of glad the way my team played out, because of missing the elite wide receiver 1 to spend upward. I automatically flipped my thought process to, all right, let me just attack those third through 5th round wide receivers and put together my room while spending down. And the last thing I'll say, I don't want to talk too much about my team, guys, but I thought Ayuk is still being mispriced in auctions. We had the news break the night before going into this auction, and he was one of those guys where I was like, you know what? I don't think people are going to view him as a $35 to $38 wide receiver, like a late 2nd round pick. And sure enough, in the early auction, he went for $21, which I thought was the steal of the early auction. I paid up a little more at $27, but I don't know if in Vegas he's not a $35 wide receiver, or in that range at least.
Yeah, fair enough. I got a quick follow-up question for you on that, Chris. Where, like Jackson Smith and Jigba, you got for $13. Where in the process were you guys when you picked him up? It looks like he was probably nominated fairly early, while there were still probably some elite wide receivers left on the board.
It was pretty early when I got him. I think he went for 15 or 16 in the early auction. I was happy to get him for 13. Most people view him, I guess, in an auction or a snake as a wide receiver 4. I view him as a wide receiver 3 at worst, and possibly a wide receiver 2 once this season gets going. So I wasn't coming out of this super auction without Jackson Smith and Jigba on my team.
Yeah.
Nice.
For me, with the first auction, I went with a true stars and scrubs approach. I ended up early on buying in on Tyreek and Jefferson, so I paired them together. And I did wait on running back. I feel like I got pretty decent value at the end game to try to save my running back room, because it was looking pretty ugly. And then in this $2,500 one, I would have picked my spot to jump in if one of the top 1st round players was going for a decent price. But otherwise, my plan in this one was to be more. I always go stars and scrubs, but I wanted to be more balanced in this league. So I kind of, I stayed disciplined and stayed away from the heavy bidding early on, and just kind of went with more of a balanced team. And my team is Team 7. The Mahomes.
I think you got to steal. I think you got to steal with Jacobs at 25. And when I look back on this whole auction, so many of these teams have 2 really good running backs that, are top 4 rounds, top 50 overall players, top, at the running back position. And if you combine them, they went for less than my Bijan. That was $61. And looking back, I don't know if I would have changed that. Sometimes you come into these auctions and there's a small handful of players that you're like, they will be on my team no matter what. Mm-hmm. I don't care if I have to. I'm one of these guys. I know a lot of people play the auction where they're like, all right, I have my RB1 budgeted for $37 and I'm not going above it. No, I come in and I say, I have 2 or 3 guys that I got to make sure I get. And if I got to go above an extra $5 even, I don't care. I'll move that money somewhere else. If I have 15 budgeted for my quarterback, well, now it becomes 10 if I don't have my quarterback, and I'll pump it into those guys that I want to make sure that I have, that I build around. And like I said, I thought Bijan would go for 55 to 58. I went and paid 61, but he's mine now. And I'm, I have him on my team, and I had to make up for it elsewhere.
Yeah. I will say the thing that stuck out to me was the bidding war on Evan Ingram. I really didn't understand it. So what happened, guys, to play it out for you, basically, the top tight ends all went off the board, and Ingram was basically the last one of that tier. And I did not understand if team 3, the Jalen Hurts team, already had Kittle on their team. And I don't know if they were trying to price enforce and got, stuck there, or what they were doing, but they were going back and forth. And I forget with what team.
Yep. I remember that.
Yeah. You remember that, Chris? And
I do.
So when you look at the price
thought process, it really is stupid. Like for me, Nelson, I'm sorry. I just want to get this out because it's stupid for me. When you if you spent on your tight end, okay, and you're trying to price enforce another player, and that guy stops. If you're in a bidding war and he just stops and he's like, all right, you know what? You got him. You just ruined your team. There's no way you budgeted for 2 tight ends for over $30-something. Like, that's just dumb. Like, for me, if I have my elite RB1, for instance, like if I got Bijan at 61 and I feel like, oh, Breece Hall should be like 58, and the guy at 55 is like 55, and I'm like, oh, he should pay more. Oh, 57. And then they just stop. Well, I just blew up my own team. Like, that's what that owner was doing with the Evan Ingram bid while already having Kittle, and that's it. Let somebody else bid him up and everything. Don't blow up your own team just because you're like, oh, I'm going to suck another $2 or $3 out of this guy. It'll backfire on you sometimes.
Yeah, I was trying to remember who it was that he got into the bidding war with, but if you guys look, Ingram went for 18, and then you go and look at where McBride, Kelsey and Laporta went for, all in that range. It just didn't make sense. Like at some point, if you're trying to price enforce, the way it went down was it went by $1 in $1 increments. When you're at 16 and the dude goes 17 on you for Ingram because he's desperate for that tight end, like, you're already above what Ingram should be valued at. So you should look at it as pat yourself on the back. You did a good job to price enforce, and the guy is going to pay 17 on Ingram. Instead, you go 18 thinking like it was going to be never ending. It just didn't make sense to me. So I think that hurt that player's team by doing that, having Ingram and Kittle. Also, team 11 stuck out to me. Once you pay for Kelsey, right, at $19, like, why are you getting in on the Mark Andrews train? Like that. Yeah. In auctions, it's one thing in redraft if like a tight end falls and you think it's a value. But in auctions, like that money is so valuable, you can't be spending $12 on your second tight end when you have Travis Kelsey. So like that was the other thing that stuck out to me that
team was a disaster, Nelson. That was just, listen, let's call it the way it is. In both auctions in New York, we had one owner that was just doing some crazy things, and you'll see it there with the Andrews and Kelsey, especially what he did at quarterback. There's no reason to draft a third quarterback when Jordan Love is on your board already.
Yeah. So those were some of the things, as far as like do's and don'ts, I try to be careful when I'm price enforcing on a guy. I'll read his team and I'll look and I'll see, oh, he needs this receiver or he needs this tight end. But once I feel like he's paying a fair price, you got to hop off, man. Like you can't keep going because that guy, like Chris said, that guy stops, you've just screwed up your whole team.
Yeah, you really can't make bids that you're not willing to back up.
Throw your plan out the window if you do that.
Yeah, you can't make bids that you're not willing to back up, because you got to assume that at any moment, all of a sudden, it could be crickets, and there you sit. So, I just, when I'm in auctions, I won't make a bid that is for a price that I can't live with for whatever reason.
Now, obviously, auctions, I would say is not in my wheelhouse compared to like redraft. So I'd be curious for you guys to critique that team and what you didn't like about it or whatever.
Your team, Nelson?
Yeah.
Where are you again?
Mahomes.
I thought it was a good build. Honestly, it as you said, it's a little bit less stars and scrubby and a little bit more of a team silo or whatever. But you still put most of your money into your starting lineup, which is the way you got to do it. I mean, you cannot leave a ton of money left over for your bench, or you're just going to fall too far behind, week to week. So, I thought it was well built because you got the Josh Jacobs and Javonte Williams, for your two starting running backs. You got Kupp, Worthy, DJ Moore, Deebo Samuel, and then you still got Keenan Allen and Jerry Jeudy. For a nice wide receiver core, you've got Mahomes, the elite quarterback. You've got the elite tight end with Dalton Kincaid, and so you've got good enough depth. You got some interesting players as kind of your running backs. That are on your bench. You've got Corum and Marshawn Lloyd and Cam Akers, Zach Charbonnet, so you weren't just scraping around, just trying to fill out a team. Like, some teams, they get themselves in so much trouble, and then they've got, $13 left to get their last 10 players. And, they can only almost get only the people who they're able to nominate. And then they have to hope nobody outbids them by one. You clearly left yourself in a position where, if you needed to bid 2 or 3, you could bid 2 or 3, and you could pick up those players that you really wanted instead of the ones that the room was just going to stick you with.
Yeah, I actually wrote some notes on that, on your team, Nelson. I liked it. You got an elite quarterback and elite tight end while still pulling off a really good wide receiver room. And you have the option of bringing a Jeudy or Keenan Allen into your starting lineup. And obviously the receiver is going to be a flex for you between Allen and Jeudy. So that's good to be able to have some depth there. And you still, I think the key for you was pulling off the Javonte Williams for $10 as your RB2. What I don't like about this team is I think in the auctions, you needed a somewhat reliable third running back. And I know it's tough when you spend up at quarterback and tight end. So that's pretty much what you sacrificed. But I don't think you could look at any of your running backs outside of Jacobs and Javonte and go, all right, I'm going to put them in and feel good about it. Because your whole running back room, you're waiting for something to open up with all these running backs, the Corums, the Lloyds, the Akers, they're all the backups. It's kind of like a snake draft idea, right, Nelson, where, you're locked into your starters, everything. And then late, once the 11th and 12th rounds come around, now you're just picking off all green stickers, backup running backs, and you're waiting for an injury to make one of these guys valuable. But you're going to need Jacobs and Javonte to stay healthy for most of the season if none of these guys pop, because you can't go look at your running back room and bring them into your starting lineup. I guess would be the only critique there.
Okay. So let's, I think we've covered this pretty well. I just wanted to hit one last topic, real quick, because we are getting kind of long here, but I want to talk to you guys about your Sunday routine and how you handle watching games. Because obviously, we want to see as much of the action as we can every week. So I want to find out what's your setup for watching the early or late slate of games on Sunday. I mean, the standalone primetime games, those are easy, but the early and late slate, that's where you got to have your eyes in a lot of different places. And I'm also curious, do you ever actually go to the games during that Sunday slate, the early or late games, or do you only go to primetime games, or do you not go to games at all, or what is the routine for you? And Nelson, you can kick us off here.
I'll let Matty talk. He hasn't talked for.
Oh yeah,
Matt, you still there, buddy?
Good point. Yes,
Matt, you still there, buddy?
He wasn't in these auctions, so like I feel like he's left out.
Yeah, no, I figured keep my mouth shut. I didn't do any auctions. Don't speak what you haven't done. For me, on Sundays, I will not leave the house. I don't want to go to a game. I'll go to a prime time, like a Thursday night or a Monday night. Yeah, sure. But as far as Sundays go, I'm up at the crack of dawn. There's some last-minute waivers with FFPC because they run Sunday morning. Making sure my lineup's, listening to all the news, double-checking everything, placing some football bets too. So there's just so much to do on Sunday mornings. And, I got the big screen up. I got the iPad up. I got another smaller TV going. So, for me, those Sundays are precious. And there's no way I'm leaving the house.
All right. Nelson, how about you?
Yeah. I'm not leaving the house on Sundays. Once football season starts, my setup is I have like basically like a movie theater set up downstairs with stadium seating, and I got a big screen. I got TVs on the side.
Brag about it. Where's our invite, Nelson? When do we get an invite?
Listen, I'm not that far from you, Chris. So don't, you can come anytime you want. Absolutely. Okay. I know you're busy. I know you're busy with your restaurant and everything on Sundays, so it'd be tough, but absolutely. Anyone's always welcome. There's plenty of seating, but that's my setup. I have no interest in going to games. For me, I want to be watching all the games. Sometimes I'll make, food on Saturday night, but otherwise I'm ordering out on Sunday, got my food, got my drinks. And that's it. Wake up Sunday morning. It's basically, look at my lineups and answer questions on, start sit questions on the Discord chat. That's my routine.
Sunday is the Sabbath. It's an event every Sunday for us in football season. And to agree with the guys, don't ask me to go to a football game. Don't say you got an extra ticket for a Giant or Jet game. I'm saying no, flat out. I will never go to a game unless it's maybe a playoff game or a Monday night game. But even then, my Monday nights, I like to sit, relax. Obviously, owning a sports bar, I'm there on Sundays, but I'll tell you what, every 3 or 4 Sundays, I won't go in just because I enjoy being home and watching all the games, just like these guys said, so much that I just need it. I need to get away from the whole bar restaurant with the games on and just sit by myself and have all the games on. And I enjoy that more than anything. So every now and then I have to do that. But yeah, Sundays, that's my routine for Sunday.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me. I will not go to games during the early or late slate. I will occasionally go to a primetime game. Sunday night's probably the least likely of them, just because you got to leave before the late games are done to get to that primetime game. But I got the the giant TV set up, and I've got I can run 2 inputs on it, and split screen it, so I can run Red Zone on one, and I can run whatever game I think is the most important to me on the other one. And I've got my iPad as well, so I can run a game on that. If I need to, I can run a game on my my cell phone. So I've got everything set up around me. I make sure that I know what we're doing for dinner, and I make sure the family knows it's not happening until after that. The last of the the late Sunday slate ends, then I will cook dinner. It's going to be easy, and my goal is to be done with dinner and sitting back down in front of the TV by the time the Sunday night game rolls around. My wife knows that Saturday is her day. Whatever she wants to do on Saturday, I'm there with her. We're going to do it. We're going to have fun. It's kind of her day is. I don't worry about college football at all, because she knows Sunday is my day. And so I'm going to be in front of the TV during those, 17, 18 weeks. So that's kind of how we handle it at our house. All right. Well, we're at an hour and a half, so time to wrap this up, guys. Thanks everybody for for viewing. We're really excited about getting out to Vegas. It's going to be a fun time. We've still got a full week of drafting basically left, so lots going on. We wish you all luck in your drafts as well. But we want to thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the Player Profiler Network if you're not. If you're interested in getting some more in-depth help, make sure you reach out to Nelson with his FTN package. It's a great package, and if you're looking to improve your game, there's nothing better than having a coach or a mentor, and Nelson can be that guy for you. I've watched him do it a lot, and he does a very good job at it. So that's a great way to kind of level yourself up and take that next step, because he can give you feedback on draft boards right after they happen, and what you could have improved on, all that kind of stuff. So, and for that matter, you could probably reach out to any of us too, and if you got questions or anything like that, feel free to ask. So next week, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk a little bit more about our in-season routine. We'll talk about how we process games, set lineups, all that kind of stuff. We'll cover that in the first few weeks. But mostly a lot of what we're going to talk about next week probably is how we're reacting to week one, the things we are reacting to and what we're choosing not to react to as well. So just want to say until then, good luck, finish building your empire, and have yourself a great week.